Hello, my beloved Econ students. So here we are. I'm going to give you the correct answers to make sure you have all the right ones for this practice, these practice questions that we've done. So again, as you go through, I've got the quiz in front of me, just like I was taking it like you would. I'm going to write in the correct answers in order to get credit. You have to write them in exactly as I am to make sure that you get all of them right. As long as you get all of them right, you get credit for this assignment. So the first question I'm going to explain, of course, too, as I go along. So it's asking these first five whether or not they would be in our GDP. This first one would not be in GDP. So right, not in GDP. And the reason is, remember, it is a raw material, only the finished product. And so General Mills buying corn, that's not the last time you're going to see that corn. It's going to be turned into cereal that we're going to buy as consumers. So number one, not in GDP. Number two, consumer buys corn from an American farmer that they're going to eat for dinner. That is in GDP because that's the last time that corn is going to be sold. So again, the difference between selling it to General Mills is General Mills is going to turn it into something else, a finished product. When a consumer buys it, needs it, that's the last time it's bought. Therefore, it is included in GDP. The next one, Hostess is an American-owned company, but it's producing its Twinkies in a factory in Mexico, not in GDP. It has to be produced on American soil. It does not matter that it's an American company. Number four, the following item would let's see, a used car is sold through cars.com, okay, not in GDP. Remember, only new sales. Sorry if I can type. New sales are included in GDP, not used products or resales. And then lastly, a consumer buys a Sony TV from Best Buy. Now, it specifies Sony is a Japanese-owned company, but they're making the TVs here in America. That is in GDP. Again, as long as it's made in America, it does not matter who makes it. It's got to be made in America. All right, number 6, 7, and 8, pretty straightforward, just the different types of unemployment. So the mismatch between jobs and worker skills, that is what we call structural unemployment. Again, that's pretty much a straight definition thing. When the economy is in recession, that is cyclical. Remember, an easy way of remembering that, the economy is sick. Okay, now we're going to talk about that next unit, and we're seeing this happen all around us as we speak. So hold on to that thought. And then last one, when people are between jobs or looking for their first job, that's called frictional unemployment. Now, of those three types, which two are considered natural? Well, frictional and structural are considered natural. And the reason is we're always going to have those to some degree. Cyclical is the kind that we want to avoid. All right, question 10. So if your personal interest rate is 10%, so pretty simple math here, and this is how you're going to see it on the test. If your personal interest rate is 10%, $100 today is worth $110 in 1 year. So basically just a 10% gain, and 10% of 100 is 10. So add that to it, and you get 110. Question number 11. So if your personal interest rate is 3%, so the first thing I want to say here is this. If your personal interest rate is 3%, then $100 today is worth $103 in a year. So if the offer is more than that, that's a good deal. And you say, yes, I will go ahead and lend my money, because if $100 is worth $103 and you're going to give me something greater than that, $104, I'm going to perceive that as a gain. And so I'm going to go ahead and do it. All right, number 12 is a reserve ratio question. So it's just a percentage thing. So the bank has $50,000 in deposits. Of those $50,000, they have to keep $5,000. Well, $5,000 is what percent of $50,000? And the answer is 10%. So you know that it's 10% because they have to keep 10% of their deposits in reserve. All right, so number 13, I'm going to go to my smartboard real quick for this. If the reserve ratio is 20%, what is the money multiplier? Well, here's our formula. Money multiplier, and this is important. Make sure you know this. Money multiplier is equal to 100 divided by the required reserve ratio. Well, in this case, the required reserve ratio is 20. So 100 divided by 20, and I apologize, I'm doing this with my mouse, so it's a little awkward, but is 5. Okay, so the answer to number 13 is 5. If the required reserve ratio is 50%, it's the same process. 100 divided by 50 is 2. There you go. All right, now 15 and 16, there are 2 steps involved here. The first step is you have to figure out the money multiplier. The second step is you have to multiply the money. So the required reserve ratio is 10%. Let me stop right there and again give you our little 100 divided by 10. And of course, that's going to come out to 10. So our money multiplier, if it's 10%, is 10. Okay, so the money multiplier is 10. What's step 2? Multiply the money. How much money is deposited? $1,000. 1,000 times 10 is 10,000. Okay. And again, if you didn't put the comma in there, I set it up to where it should accept that. If you didn't put the dollar sign, I set it up to where it should accept that. But basically $10,000. Same thing on question 16. The reserve ratio is 25%. Okay, so 25%, we're going to do it over here, 100 divided by 25. Okay, this is step 1, remember. That's a terrible 2. Let's try that again. Okay, 100 divided by 25, and your reserve ratio should be 4. Okay, and again, my apologies, I'm doing it with this mouse, so it's not as neat as I would like it to be. But now the money multiplier is 4. $3,000 is deposited, so you multiply the money. 4 times 3,000. $12,000 is actually in the economy being spent. All right, now the next few questions are asking about the Fed and money supply and interest rates and all these things. And so this goes back to worksheet, I believe it was worksheet number 14. So, and 15, we talked about it as well. But if the Fed raises the required reserve ratio, let's come back here real quick. If the Fed raises the reserve ratio, let's say it was 10%, and now they raise it to 20%. Okay, so if I go from 10 to 20, my reserve ratio goes from, my money multiplier goes from 10 to 5. Well, if you have a smaller money multiplier, you're going to have a smaller amount of money. But here's the thing, it's not asking about the money multiplier, it's asking about money supply, it's asking about interest rates. What we do know is the money supply goes down. Now remember, if the money supply goes down, interest rates will go up. Okay, there is an inverse relationship between the money supply and interest rates. Okay, so the Fed raising the reserve ratio makes the money supply go down, which makes interest rates go up. That's why I wrote increase. All right, number 18, if the Fed lowers the discount rate. So remember, the discount rate is the interest rate the Fed charges on loans. Okay, now all you really need to know as far as this problem is concerned is that if the discount rate goes down, interest rates in the economy are going to go down as well, because a lot of interest rates are based on the discount rate. So that being said, if interest rates go down, again, the question is what happens to the money supply? Well, interest rates go down, money supply goes up because they vary inversely, and that is important. Money supply and interest rates vary inversely, and so the money supply will increase because interest rates went down. All right, now 19 and 20 is asking about open market operations, the buying and selling of bonds. Okay, so a couple things to remember. First of all, if the Fed sells bonds, that's what number 19 is asking about. If the Fed sells bonds, that takes money out of the economy. Why does it take money out of the economy? Remember, when you sell something, okay, think about when you sell something like at a garage sale or something like that, do you give money or do you get money? When you sell something, you get money. Okay, so the Fed is getting money, and when the Fed has money, it's taken out of the economy. So that is going to cause the money supply to decrease. Okay, the Fed sells bonds, money is taken out of the economy, the money supply decreases. Now, the next one, number 20, and again, pay attention, it's asking about interest rates this time, not the money supply. But if the Fed buys bonds on the open market, okay, when you buy something, do you give money or do you get money? You give money. Okay, so if the Fed is buying bonds, they're giving money to the economy. That makes the money supply go up. Now, if the money supply goes up, what happens to interest rates? They will go down because they vary inversely. Okay, and this is what the Fed has done over the last few weeks. They've bought a lot of securities, bonds, and things like that on the open market to pump money into the economy to deal with our coronavirus recession and the people that are unemployed. And so that has caused interest rates to go down. Okay. All right, number 21, of those three tools that we talked about, reserve ratios, discount rate, open market operations, their favorite is open market operations. Remember, it's very quick and it's very precise. That's why they like that. All right, negative externality. Remember, I gave an example of a negative externality would be something like pollution. or we talked about food fights, things like that, drunk driving. And so negative externalities tend to cause an overproduction of the good. Okay, if you're not paying the cost, you don't care, you're going to go ahead and make it. Okay, so you're going to make more than society wants. Now, if they're making more than society wants, what discourages people from doing something? Taxes. They don't like taxes. Okay, so you're going to tax the behavior, and that'll help fix it. And then the last two, a positive externality, that's where you do something, but somebody else benefits. Now, if you don't benefit, you're not going to do it as much as you want, and it's going to lead to an underproduction of that good. How do you encourage more people to do it? Offer a subsidy. In other words, where the government says we're going to pay you money in order to do that. Okay, so that will encourage people to do more and fix the externality. All right, so that encompasses a pretty decent portion of the types of questions you're going to be tested over whenever we get to that. So this is a nice little review guide to hold on to and utilize and look at. So if you have any specific questions, something I didn't cover or didn't explain well enough, again, shoot me an email or a text or something like that. I'd be happy to help out. Otherwise, those are the answers. If we submit that quiz, it should tell us that we got a 25 out of 25. And let's see, yep, 25 out of 25. So if you put in the answers I just put in, you'll get your credit for the assignment. All right, until next time.